Welcome back, super users. Today we are in our 14th video of our 1 to 25 days Excel learning for free. Again, you can get this video or you can watch this video in one of my YouTube channel, and that will be termed either as Excel User Series 6.0 or Excel Super User Program. Today we are about to continue of what we have done a while ago. So we are about to see how we're going to use this data set a little better, and we will be seeing how to use if again, if yes, where you will use it, and then where you will be using nested if. Plus we are about to take up a deep dive in lookup, Vlookup and Xlookup in our data sets. So this is the agenda for the day today. So we will be touching informations on the formulas again. Today we are sticking to the formula again, so we will touch these four formulas again. Lookup, I am about to just make it a note to that at the moment, but again I'll love to touch that also. And then I will be touching the if s formula and the nested if formula for our learning today. So let's see how to do that. So I've just kept the data set ready for us. We will see how we're going to use these data better. I have taken the data sets for our use, and then this is our day 14 sessions for us. First, I'm starting with an if series here. Again, I have a lot of example on the if, but I'm going to use one of them. So I have 16 variants here. Again, I just given you all the file that we are about to work and with an example in it. So you can see a lot more of tryouts for you in your Excel sheets for if conditions. You can do a lot more. I'm going to use the second option today. Again, I'm not really doing anything very big here. I'm just trying to make you learn things a little better. My agenda for this particular learning will be a little lighter, and I'm not going to go too deep into it. Again, you can use this as much as you want it to be. My first logic will be on if condition. Again, we all know how an if condition works. In our yesterday's session, when we started with a logical test of and or, I started with a simple logical test, and then I showed you why and where we will use a single if condition. Again, if the current scenario says, again I have two different data sets here, and I'm going to show my revenue is 1000 rupees and my expenditure is 500, then the profit is going to be 500 rupees for me all the way around. What I want right now is I would like to keep an if condition. Again, when I keep an if condition, I am curtailed to handle only two scenarios. I may not be able to give the third dimension that I'm looking forward for. Wherever you need a third dimension in your data set, probably you can switch in that scenario to a nested if, or if you're using Office 365, you can use ifs. I'm not sure about whether the ifs is available in 2019 Professional Plus edition. Let me just check that, and probably in my next video I can confirm that, because in my organization we are using 2019 Professional Plus in LTE, where we are about to conduct a training from second week of February. So we are starting a batch on second week of February. If anybody wish to join a live session, an offline class, you want to come to a classroom and then learn something, you can join there. I'll be training you there. There is a specific timeline that comes into play, so we will see how we're going to do that. Now what I want right now is I want to just create a formula here. Now you can see that the answer is coming out everywhere here. What I want right now is I want to just try to get an information saying that if my valuation is greater than or equal to 0, then I need a profit, and if the valuation is less than that, then there's going to be a loss. So here I'll be having only two scenarios. The first scenario, I'm going to use an if condition. Again, I'm going to tell the system that the logical test of this value is greater than 0. Then I can convert this into a profit. Again, I'm just typing everything in a double quote because I'm not selecting this from a cell references here. You can see that again, when I go for an if condition, it is only either giving a plus or minus. It's not giving you a maybe option for you. What I want is, if I am getting a data set which is exactly 0, then I should not call that as a. Now if I take this into consideration, it will consider this as a loss. Whether I'm going to get a 499 here or whether I'm going to get a 500 here, both the scenarios giving you a loss here. Only 501 gives you a profit here. I don't want to pick a data, or I don't want to do things in such a way that this has to give only 2 dimensions for me. This is where the third dimension is required. Again, when I go for a nested if, I am curtailed to do a little lesser because the maximum number of conditions that I can add in a nested if is 64. This is where our new function is going to really make our life a little better. It's almost doubling it. It's one shot of doubling the value here. If yes will allow you to do as many conditions as you want. Again, when I go for an if nested if functionality, I generally do this. I keep one-dimensional data in place. If I'm going to say I want to talk from the plus to minus, then I'll say profit first, break even next, and subsequently I'll say loss. I can say it in any order that I want. There is no order dimension that is required. In an if-else condition, again, the condition that you're going to specify is going to be a singular condition on each and every dimension. You're going to write a lot of conditions there, but again, you can write the condition in however way or whichever way you wanted it to be. In a nested if also it works for me, but again, I keep a track here, so I just want to see whether I'm getting everything right or not. When you do an if-else condition, again, we all know that we saw this in our previous class when I say which condition I'll take first. So if the conditions are more and the results are less, I'll use if and an or. And if the conditions are less and the results are more, then I will be taking the data sets on the next point where I'll use if, nested if, or if else. Probably this we would have discussed in our yesterday's session where I can take the data sets. So this is the 2 conditions that we'll do it. We have done the first condition yesterday, and today we are about to do the second condition for us. Again, the second condition is going to be on the if else and nested if. Again, I'm just jumping to that right now. When I do that, again, I have to be very careful because here I cannot use a function argument comfortably. So I'm going to just say if condition. The first logical test is going to be if this is greater than 0, then I'll term that as profit. So I got the profit component coming up here. Again, now I cannot add the next condition here because if I add it, it will become an if condition for me. It will not become a nested if condition here. So to make a nested if condition, I'll give a comma and then I'll start another if condition. And then I'll say if this valuation, again, this cell is equal to 0, then I'm going to call this as break even. So here comes the third dimension that I'm looking for. Again, I'm not going to give more conditions here. I'm going to say if this is going to be a false, then I'll call that as loss. So this is how we build a nested if conditional. You can see I can add if condition. Likewise, I can add as many as 64 conditions here. Now I added 2. You can add 62 more. Again, whenever you are working on more conditions, preferably keep that the true side for your results and the false side can extend to the next if condition. So if you are adding more than one condition, you can do that. I had a scenario where I used if condition almost around for 20 to 30 times. I don't really remember where the data lies here at the moment, so probably when I come back tomorrow, I will showcase before I start the next session for you, and then I'll just show you how that if is used in a real world scenario. Again, this is something which one of my friend requested me to calculate a bonus for the people who worked in a particular organization, because the company reached a particular stage. They said they are in the 25th year or 50th year or silver jubilee. I'm not very sure about what is the scenario that they're giving the bonus for the employee. Based on the number of years that the employee worked, the bonus is going to be given on a particular slab. So for that they used if condition. Probably if I would have done it, I would have done it either a Vlookup or a switch condition to do so. By that way I would have made the data set work a far better one for me. but this time around they use it a little differently. I'll show you that file, because I think that I have the file with me somewhere or the other. I would have done it. I have recently even saw that particular Excel file, and again I don't want to name the organization, but I can showcase the name of the persons and how they worked on the if conditions for you. The next logic is going to be if-else condition. Again, if-else condition is going to be little more odd for me, and again it is also easier for people to understand, because somebody who works in an if condition, sometimes they miss a comma and another dimension, and it's going to really give up here bigger odd point for me. So now if I change this to 500, I'm going to get the second condition as break even here. I would like to keep the same logic. Again, this time around I'm going to use a different formula called if yes function. When I go for an if-else function, again the logicality is this. If this is going to be greater than 0, then I'll call this as profit. Again, we will write every condition here. Again, if this is going to be equal to 0, then I'm going to call this as break even. And then if this is going to be less than 0, I'm mentioning every aspects of it. So that's this beauty of the if-else condition, because if-else condition allows you to write as many components as you want. Normally I use this in a income tax calculation. What is a tax payable for a specific person, either by in the older form of it. Again, I don't think that old form is going to be existing anymore in the next year. Probably for the current financial year filing, we may have an option of doing both of them, I believe so. From next year, I think that it will be eradicated completely, so we'll be only in the new scheme of data sets. So if that is the case, then the slabs is going to be different. Probably tomorrow we will know what is the slab is going to be. Is there is any relief for the middle class people who are really working on it. So I'm going to give an enter here. That's going to give you the same answer. If I change this to 500 or 499, all of them will be loss. If I make this as 500, few of them will give you break even, one is loss. 501, everything is going to give you profit here. The formula that I mentioned is on the right. If condition will give only 2. When you go for nested if, it's going to give you 3, and if-else is going to give you 3. Again, if-else is far more detailed. Again, there is one weird part when I come to if-else, is something which is I'm going to write every single scenario so that I can get the result accordingly. And again, as a end user, this is going to become more easier for the end user, because they'll enjoy how it is working for us. And then this give you clarity when you go into a data set and then see what's happening in our list here. So you can work something like that, and you can get the result what you want here. Again, I'm adding this a complete if formula here. I have 16 different scenarios for me, and I gave the blue color tabbed or questions, and the red one is the answers for you. So the question is asked, and you can see what is the answer is given on a specific dimension. Again, I've used formulas which we haven't learned yet. We will see formulas like median and other dimension. A lot of if condition with the specific text, or sometimes we would have used all the data sets that we need. I will move one more dimension. I want to just move this to the sheet here, because by that way you can see the comparative operator of this data set also a little better. So that way you will understand what are the comparative operators that we have in our list, and then you can start using them all here. So this is a base function that you require, and then you can go forward for all the functions. Wherever I use something a little differently, you will understand, because when I go back to this portion, the formula has greater than, less than, or not equal to is coming up here, and then there is something which is, I've used all these functionalities as much as I can in this list. Again, you go through it, and if you have any queries on the if conditions, you can comment below. I will reply to your comment. And we are in our fag end of our week 5. So today is the last session for the week 5, and I'm going to add a few more videos before I'm going to add a video from Monday, but I'm recording all those videos probably by this weekend, because next week I'm taking a session for a US, so my timing is going to be a little weird. I'm working between 7 p.m. to 2 a.m. so I may not be able to run a live session on our class. So I request you to, again, the video is not going to stop. So anyway, I'll record all the videos tomorrow. I'll add 2 or 3 videos on the English front tomorrow, and 2 or 3 videos on Tamil friends, so that next week we are not stopping it, we are still running through it, and we will get all our continuous learning without any stoppage in between. Probably I can do one more after the 3 videos recording on Saturdays and Sundays. Monday I can do one, and Tuesday I can do one, I believe so. After that I may not do that, so that I will give the videos one by one on 23, 24, sorry, 2, 3, 3, 4 and 5. I'm sorry, I'm a little confused with the dates here because I don't have a calendar next to me. So I'm not available on 4, 5, 6. These are 3 days I'm not available. So I'm going to record a lot of data sets on the 1st and 2nd, so that here I'll record 3 videos. So 3 videos will be populated here, and then 3rd and 4th I'll record the next video, though that's going to give you on 6th and 7th. So you'll get next week videos coming up here. On 8th and 9th I'll start recording me, or 7th, from 7th itself I can start working on it. The second half of the day we can continue it. Again, we are ending our session by 14th of February on a Valentine Day. I'm going to finish our session, so let's see how we're going to do all these dimensions better. Perfect. So let's jump to the next topic that we are about to discuss today. Let me close all this dimension. Let's jump back to our data set, and today we are about to see the the second USB of Excel. We call this as Vlookup. Most of the people know the term called Vlookup, but I am jumping into the world of mother of lookup, that is called mother of Vlookup is called Xlookup. So what is a lookup function? Why lookup functions are not widely used in today's world? When I go for a lookup function, again, lookup function comes in an old traditional way, and when I go back to the lookup function, I call this as static lookup. Again, this is the mother of all lookup function, including the Xlookup, because the Xlookup works like this. Again, Xlookup has more component than this. So let me just come back here. I'll go back and open the Xlookup formula. I'll just show you what is the difference between a lookup function and an Xlookup function for us. So when I go for an Xlookup functionality, I think that I don't have a screenshot for this. Yes, I don't think that I have a screenshot for Xlookup here. I only have the detailed logics of Xlookup. Anyway, I'll take the screenshot for us in our data here. So I'm going to just use Xlookup. Again, Xlookup typically works in the same pattern how a lookup function works for us. Again, Xlookup is maybe the grandson of lookup, I can say so, because son and the daughter is going to be a Vlookup and a Xlookup here. So this is the Xlookup function for us. Again, if you see, they just renamed certain fields here. Other than that, most of the data remains spick and spine, or it is in the same pattern that we have here. So lookup value, the lookup vector has become lookup array, the result vector has become result array, and then we have 2 more dimension: if not found, match mode, and search mode. When we come back to Xlookup, I'll explain you more about that. I'm going to leave the X if not found at the moment, because I will take that as a last final session where we want to memory jog what we have learned so far. At the time, I'll try to add one more video. We'll be having more videos coming up here after our 25th class, because I'm trying to add more Excel hacks here. So what kind of hacks that we can work around with that, what is your old functionality that you can use, what is the new functionality you can use. We'll see all of them. And this is the data that I'm going to work right now. So this is the data that we are working for almost all our data. I'm not going to use this data in a tabular form. I'm going to keep this as the range. If you want to convert this into a tabular form, you can do it, because this data is not going to update right now. So I'm going to keep that as a static one. And this is what I'm going to fill in here. So this is the data set that I would like to keep in our list. So I'm going to find out these dimensions here. So these are the invoice numbers that I have here, and this is what the data that I require. So I want to find out the custom products that I sold for a specific invoice number here. Again, when I go back to my raw data, the last data that I have is 3653, and I'm trying to find out the 4000th invoice numbers, customer and the product here. I'm going to use this formula in a little differently, because this formula is going to do wonders, because not many people know that a lookup function can do both dimensions. Lookup can do vertical lookup and horizontal lookup both together. And there is one more addition that we can do to a lookup functionality is called reverse lookup. Again, for a reverse lookup in a VLOOKUP, we have to really kill ourselves, or we have to use another function called choose. Again, we don't want to do that when you're working on a lookup functionality, because lookup function works really very nicely. Because the reason why lookup function able to do that seamlessly is because lookup function has only what data is required to work around. So for example, if I'm going to work on this lookup function, I'm going to take the first lookup function first, where I have three syntax coming up here. I'm going to just say equals lookup, and then I will try to give a control A here. Then the system will ask you a question. So which argument you want to choose? You want to choose the first argument or second argument? These are the very old formula. When you pick up index function also, you will see similar kind of two syntax variants that you can see in here. Not all the formulas in Excel does have that scenario, that cushion to handle it, but again, these formulas are way back or way old formulas that we have in our spreadsheet. I'll go back to Excel 3.0 or 4.0 version. Now we are probably in Excel 15, 16, 17. We are in the Excel 18 right now in 2021 version. So I'm talking about Excel 3.0 or 4.0, where these formulas existed, I believe. I didn't work on that older Excel. I started working from 97 a bit. From 2003 I'm more familiar, so I didn't go back and learn a lot of formulas. At that time it was much more lesser, much more compact. Many people say the 97 was the best version because it doesn't have too much of things in it, but according to me 2003 is the best version. After that, any version, I'm learning it as a learner, so I love all the versions, but again, the most comfortable version as far as I can say, I'm still use some of the keyboard shortcuts of 2003 here. I'm going to use the first formula here, then gives you three different logics here. It's asking me questions of what do you want to do with it. Again, when I work on this particular formula, I'll call this a static, because as long as you have the answers, the system is going to give you the answers beautifully. The moment you don't have an answer, the system is going to give you an answer, but it's going to be pathetic. This is the place where the lookup is overlooked, and then they have really found the next two lookups called vertical lookup and horizontal lookup. I don't know why the vertical lookup and horizontal lookup cannot do a reverse lookup directly. Formula people who have created it could have done it a little better, but I don't know. I really don't know the real reason behind it. A programmer who have thought about it would have had a different ideology altogether, but as we are end users, so we will always demand for more. In the lookup value, as I'm only adding one column, so I can use a spill effect. Let me see whether the spill effect works, because normally spill effect will not work in an array formula. Lookup is one of the array formula here. Again, it's single column, so I can take a chance here. I'm going to give a tab here. Then it will ask you a question, what is a lookup vector? So the lookup function works in such a way that it lookups, I have a resulted cell where I'm going to see all my answers here, but this has to be compared to a cell where the data lies actually. So that's where the lookup vector comes into play. So this is where I'll compare the data with the raw data where I have the invoice number coming up here, and then I'll give a tab here. Then it jumps to the result vector. I'm going to go back to my raw data again, and this time around I need a product as my output, so I'm going to select the whole product here. So when I do this data set again, the data is going to give you a full list. Again, the rule number one when we are working on a lookup functionality is please do check your height of the data are similar. I cannot have a shorter data sets, because sometimes if the data is short, I may not get the right answer that I'm looking for. If you see the lookup vector, it starts from 83 to 83655. When I go for result vector, I'm starting it from F2 again. Actually, it should be F3 here. Again, I'm going to keep the data set in such a way that I'm starting with the data here, not with the headers here. And then now I get the information, and I'm going to give a enter. That's going to populate all my answer automatically. Again, if you see, I'm getting an answer for 4000. Unfortunately, when I go back to my raw data and go to the last line here, my last line says 3653. If I go down to this data set, you will definitely see that my answer is coming from this result, because it is a approximate match by default. So when I go back to a lookup function, so if you want to learn more about lookup function, you can just read them below here. You can, when I pick up any one of this data set, it says the lookup function looks up a value either from the one row or one column. That's what I told you, that lookup can do vertical and horizontal lookup beautifully. And then from an array provides from a backward compatibility. Again, it also have a reverse lookup in it. You can see that it reads the data beautifully for us. You can either pick any one of these dimension very effectively here. So this is how it works. Again, it is an approximate match when we are working on this data set. It is not going to give you an exact match here. So when we are going to get a lookup function is always going to give an approximate match. By that way, it is not going to give you an error message saying that this value does not exist. In a Vlookup, we have a facility. Again, Vlookup is also by default an approximate match, but we have a cushion in Vlookup saying that I can choose where I want to get an exact match in a data set here. That way it allows you to do things a little better. So let me just come back again. I'm going to find out the customer for the same. Again, it's going to give you the answer for that. Again, before I do that, the customer name is going to be in here, is called hello world. So let's see whether it is going to give you the hello world for us here, and see what it's going to give you when I start working on it. Again, I'm going to give a lookup function. This time around, I'm trying to use the second formula. When I go for second formula, the second formula is going to have only two of them. So what is the difference here? Again, please keep your mind pretty open, and then please make sure that you are concentrating a little bit hard here. I'm going to select the second option. When I go for second option, again, I'm going to look up value is going to be this. There's no change in it. When I go for an array, it is not going to pick up like I did in my previous formula where I picked two columns. I checked the invoice number in one column. I wrote a result from the other column. This time around, when I go back to the raw data, the array is going to be like this. I'm going to select until my result itself here. What result that I want is, I want to know the customer name here. When I choose this data set in the array functionality, I will retain, or I will select only until my resulted column, not all the columns here. If I select all the columns, the last column that I chose will be your data sets here. Again, when I do this, the lookup function, again, let me just make, I want to see the lookup function second option works with the spilled array formula for me. So I'm going to select this, yes, tab it down, and then I'll go back to my raw data, and I'm going to select only until the customer column. Don't select until sales. The moment you select the sales, your answer is going to be a little weird, because the last column, in the data set, what is the last column, that is going to be your result here. So that's what it says, that array is a range of cell that contains a text, number, or logical value that you want to compare with the lookup value. So the result is going to be the one which you add in here. The moment I do that, you can see that the answer is coming like that for you. Again, I'm getting the same answer again. If I'm going to do the same logic in Vlookup, probably my last option I can eradicate, or I can say that if there is no such invoice number exists in my data set, please don't give an answer to it. Call that as not applicable, or you will see a figure called #NA. So this is how we will do our lookup formulas. Let me just pick up the first formula on the top here, the formula text. Again, I'm going to select the first cell alone, because my answer is not going to drop down in all dimensions. So this is going to be a little larger formula than we imagined it, because I have three syntaxes coming up here. Again, I'm going to just copy, I'm going to format this somewhere at the bottom, and I'll reduce the size because I want to see the formula here. I'm going to just come back here, let's say equals formula text, then pick the first column. Again, please remember that I'm picking the first data set for one good reason, because I will not get the formula in other dimension. So you can see that for yourself. When I try to add a formula text, the first formula will showcase the data, the other formulas will be nothing. So this is going to happen in my data set on the other dimension, because I use the spilled effect. this is not going to work for you. So that's why I just use the first cell as our references here. Again, the data sets are very nice here. Again, here I chose two different columns separately on the first formula. Here I didn't do that. I just chose the column until what result that I want here. Again, choose it wisely, because the moment you choose the data set a little differently here, then the system will going to give you a very odd answer for us. So make sure that you are choosing the data set correctly here. So by that way the data set will come perfectly for you. So this is how we will use lookup functionality here. Again, using lookup function is nothing wrong in it, it still works for you. But again, wherever we have a doubt our data is not really designed properly, or our data has a lot of information which we are not gonna look into it, then I preferably keep the lookup functionality a little different in here. So let's jump back to the USB of Excel. Again, this is what we call it as the most used function in Excel. I will call this as Vlookup. Let me just take this. I don't like this screenshot. Let me take another screenshot for us. This is the Vlookup that we're going to see here. When I go for a Vlookup, again, in a lookup functionality we had two different formulas, and we also had a logic where we can work with it. So I just showed you the screenshot here for the Vlookup and the next lookup. The Vlookup will have more syntax here. Again, when I work with a Vlookup, I have to be a little more careful, because when I do Vlookup, my Vlookup is going to be very different from the lookup that you have ever come across. Or if you're already using a Vlookup, what you use a Vlookup in your organization is going to be very different from what I'm going to use in my way of teaching a Vlookup here. When you go for Vlookup, again, it starts with a lookup value. That's fine for me. It is going to be similar to what we have done in the lookup functionality here. And when I go for a table array, last time I never did that. In the first instant, I took only what column that I want as a result. In second instant, I took only until the column that I really needed it. When I go for a Vlookup, we don't do that. We pick up the column separately in the third syntax. We will pick the entire table for our references always. So the table array will be the full data set that we have here. We're going to choose all of them. In a column index number, that's where I am going to make a small change here. That's where I'm going to make our Vlookup work beautifully for us. So let's see how I'm going to do that, and how we're going to use that to better dimensions in our list. So we will see them all one by one here. So I'm creating the same data set for us, because I want to showcase what's going to happen when we do this. So I'm going to use this data set a little differently. Normally, whenever I use a pivot table, I keep this as my usage logics here. So let's see how we're going to use these dimensions a little better. To use a Vlookup, I always maintain a small portion of changes here. So let's see what I'm about to do. Let me just format this a bit, because I'm a little format freak. So when I go for this data set, the first logic that I will do is I would like to number the columns above. So this will allow me to know the number, because sometimes when we are working, because I've worked in companies like HCL, Infosys, Wipro, ePeripheral, and so on and so forth. At that time, we will have data which goes sometime beyond 40 columns or 50 columns. I worked in a payroll when I am in HCL Technologies, where I'm a part and parcel of employee EHS team. At that time, when we take a raw data, or the data's history of a data of an employee, his history will be very big. Sometimes somebody who have a phenomenal experience, somebody who have worked in multiple organizations for 10-15 years, and then they are joining HCL for a better role, and then they are trying to work for another 5 years or something like that. If that is the case, then when I create that employee record is going to be humongous. They'll have 50 columns, 60 columns of data normally. So I number them always in this way, so that my numbering will become very easier. Again, this time around, I'm not going to run the formula from the first line. Instead, I'm going to run the formula from the headers here. If you closely watch, I'm going to go back to the VLOOKUP here, and then I'm going to run the head formulas from my first line item, because if you closely watch any of the lookup that you do, you could have done this in our lookup function also, but I didn't do it because this is the function that we all do in our routine. I'm going to just make sure that I'm doing it from the first cell, that is from the heading. I want to make the data dynamic here. We call this a single column dynamic VLOOKUP. That's why I number them above. So I want to see what is the 6th column here and what is the 7th column. When I jump back to my data set, 6th column is a product, 7th column is a purchase. I can do anything that I want. I'm going to call this as 5 right now. I want to know the product and the customer who I sold the product here. And the last functionality is called a range lookup. Again, this is something which we blindly take if you learned a VLOOKUP from your colleague. Nowadays people are addressing that. Those who are using VLOOKUP, they understand what is a 0, what is a 1. Again, as I told you a while ago, a VLOOKUP is a vertical lookup, where by default VLOOKUP takes most of our value in approximate match. Again, VLOOKUP has its own limitations here. When I go for a VLOOKUP, I cannot have a data set in a list. Again, when I go for a VLOOKUP, it will tell you that what is a VLOOKUP. Lookups looks for a value from the leftmost column. I cannot take the data from the middle, and then returns the value in the same row from a column you specify. By default, the table must be sorted in an ascending order. If the descending order comes into play, VLOOKUP is gonna go for a toss. So it's not going to give you the answer correctly. Sometimes it's going to really make your life a little bit weird. Again, for me, even though I call this as dynamic VLOOKUP or dynamic functionality on the lookup front, I'm only using them dynamically here, but the formula as such is not as dynamic as it has to be. That's where our XLOOKUP is going to take care of certain scenarios where a VLOOKUP cannot do, and what I'm doing right now, XLOOKUP cannot do that what I'm going to perform right now. So I'm going to, again, it's a single column. I can use the spell effect here. I'm going to just use a VLOOKUP here. I'll go Control A. Why I'm giving a Control A is, again, I'm going to control the data. I have a lot of syntax here. Normally when I have a lot of syntax, I'll be a little scared to use it. Again, when we go back to our dynamic spelled array formulas, most of the formula will have a hell a lot of syntax. Again, we're not going to use all of them, but when we are using all of them, we have to be very careful with that. So that's why I always use a function argument here. As I told you, it's a spelled array can be used here. I'm going to just come back here. I'm not going to answer all of them in both the columns simultaneously. I'm going to answer them one by one. If you want to answer them both simultaneously, you can do it, but again, then the spell effect will not work for you. So I'm going to go back to the data set completely. Then I'll come back to the next column. I'll give a tab here. In the table array function, I'll go back to the raw data, and then I'll select the whole list here. And then as I'm using spell effect, there is no cell reference required. The moment I jump to the column index number, the system jumps to the sheet where I started writing my answers, or where I started to want my answer to come into play. Again, I'm going to select this alone, not both of them. Let me see whether it's working for me here. Again, it won't work, and then I'm going to go for an absolute cell reference, or I'm going to go for an exact match and give an enter. So it's going to give you the first answer alone, even though I chose both the columns. Let me just remove the other column. I don't want that other dimensions here. Now you can see that automatically the last line item throws an error message saying that #NA, because in my formula, this is the formula that I chose below. Probably I can make it more readable here, because sometimes when I say 0, people will not understand it. So I'm going to call this as false. That means exact match. So when I say exact match, my answer is not going to populate for the last line item, because the raw data doesn't have that functionality. So you can see that it is the last number is 3653, so it is not going to answer that here. But if I keep an approximate match, it's going to literally work like a lookup functionality. I'm going to go for the lookup again, Vlookup again, Control A. Again, my lookup value is going to be this tab, and then I'll go back to the raw data, and then I can just select the entire data set. I'll give a tab, and then I'll select this tab 0 and enter. That's going to give you the answer automatically. Again, this time around I gave a 0. Instead of that, I'm going to give a true or an approximate match here. By that way, you can see the last line also comes in place here. So that's taking the data a little differently. So again, this did I rename it, or yes, I think that I named it in the name manager. Let me just remove that. Because it is giving me a real odd point when I do that. So now you can see the answers. Again, when I use an approximate, you can see the bottom. When I give an exact match, and that's going to give you the answer, not going to give the answer for last. When I give an approximate match, that's going to give you the answer for you. So this is how we will do a Vlookup. Again, I said this as a dynamic lookup. Is that is dynamic? Yes, it is. So now I'll jump back to my data set, and then I'll see if I want to pick up. Again, if you are picking up the second column alone, so see to that your cell is formatted to date. By that way, the system will work for you beautifully. So I'm going to just pick up both the dimension and make it a date here. So I'm going to come back to the home tab. I'll call this a short date, so that I will not have any issue the moment when I move my data set to 2 column. That's going to give you the dates for me. Again, the dates are coming a little other way around because I took the date on the other dimension. So if you want to customize this, because it is coming literally like a dynamic or a data analytical world of data formatting here. So let me select this. I'll go for Control F1. That's going to take you, Control 1. That's going to take you to the formatting of the dataset. Now the formatting is coming a little differently, so I would like to keep the formatting in this way. So by that way, the system will read the data correctly. And when I come back here, I'm going to convert this into 4. That's going to give you the 4th answer. So when I go back to this data, I can give any number between 1 to 8. That's going to give you the answer for you. So don't worry about it. Again, don't give anything beyond than that. When I give 9, that's going to give a information. Again, you will see another error here called referential error, because we don't have such data with us. So you can pick this. Again, when I pick this data, then I'll be in a spot about it. When I go for a data set where I have to talk about a number here, then I have to convert that into a list here. Again, now if I do give 2, that's going to give you a number field for you. It's not going to give you the list. Again, see to that you are giving the right data set that you're working on it. So all my data set will come automatically as long as I type it. Again, the display result will change when we are working on date alone. So keep the formatting. So keep a separate column for date. By that way, you don't want to worry about it, because date will be separate. All the other dimension will work in general format. So that's going to give you the text and the numerical valuation automatically for you. This is what we'll call it a single column dynamic Vlookup. Again, this time around, I'm going to go for the next logic that's called multi-column dynamic Vlookup. Again, when I go for a multi-column dynamic Vlookup, I'll be a little more careful here. The reason why I will be more careful when I work on this data set is here I have to use the cell references for sure. Let me come back here. Again, for a cell references, whenever I work, I want to answer all of them in one shot. So I'm going to select the range also before I start the formula. And then once I create the formula completely, I will hit a Control Enter to get my answer here. Again, I'm going to go for exact match here, not an approximate match. I'm going to go for Vlookup. This table option, I'm going to the raw data every time. You can avoid it if you don't want to do that. You can create the name manager called range based name manager. I will create one of this data right now, and then I'll show you at the moment without a name range. Then the next time I will take this data and then create a name range and then start working on that with the name range also. Let me show that both the dimension, because I want to keep two formulas running differently. So I'll create a new sheet for you with the name manager, without a name manager. So I'm going to go back again. I know that this is not a spill effective component, so I'm going to take only one cell here. And when I do that, I would like to start my mix the cell reference component, and again I will add an iCard on the 45th minute for you, where if you want to refer your data set for the cell references, you can do it. I'm going to give 2 or 3 F4s here. I'll jump to the next line. I'll come back to my raw data. I didn't created a name manager here for it, so I'm going to select all the whole data and hit 1 F4 here. That's going to freeze the data set for absolute cell reference. I'm going to give a tab down. I'll go back to my column index number for the first column. I'm going to give a row log here. We talked about this a lot. If you want to recall it again, so just jump back to our class number 2, where you will see cell references by default there. I will also add this at the bottom of our description, and you will get all those dimensions also. So I'm going to give a tab, and then I'm going to give a false here, not a 0. And then I'm going to give a control enter. That's going to populate all my answer automatically. Normally when people work on multiple column VLOOKUP, they do it column by column, and this is going to be a time saver for you. And this is one of an Excel hack which you can really enjoy the most. This is multiple column dynamic VLOOKUP. The formula that I did right now is available for you in here. So this is how we can just create a formula, and then you can start working with the formulas in this particular pattern. By that way, it will make your life a little more easier. You are not anymore spending a lot of time in creating a VLOOKUP for a multiple list here. Again, whatever I did in the VLOOKUP earlier, and then now I'm going to use that in the XLOOKUP. Again, when I go for XLOOKUP, let me see whether the one which I said is working for me. I'm going to just give an equals XLOOKUP, and then I'm not going to do anything very big here, so I'm going to call this as completely here, and then I'm going to give a comma. Then I come back to my raw data. I'm going to select the data from the heading, and then I'm going to give a comma, and then I'm going to come back to the data sets here. I want the customer name here. I'm going to select the whole data set, and then I'll give an enter here. That's going to showcase the data. For now, you can see that when I close the bracket and give an enter, it is not showcasing the data. I told you earlier, we may not able to create the data set for a multiple column in here. So multiple column is ruined out when I use an XLOOKUP functionality. So I'm going to go back to the data set here. I cannot create a heading here, so I'm going to come back here. I'll call this as form customer, and then I'm going to start the data set. I want the customer to come here. I'm going to just say equals XLOOKUP. Then I'm selecting the whole data set here. I'm going to give a comma, come back to my raw data, select all the numbers, leave the headers, comma, and then come back and select all my customers, leave the headers here. When you give an enter, that's going to populate all the answer. Again, you can see that it is giving you an exact match by default. Again, the formula that I did right now, I never mentioned anything of 0 or 1 or something like that in an XLOOKUP, so you can see that it is automatically giving you an exact match here. Again, in a VLOOKUP, I have to specify that whether you want an exact match or approximate match. If I leave this particular column blank, then I'll be in a spot of bother. I cannot have the right answer. When I give a blank, it's going to consider that as an approximate match. Again, in an XLOOKUP, I really don't want to specify that. The system by default takes everything as exact match, not like a VLOOKUP or a lookup function that we have in our data sets here. This is how you can use an X. Again, I am getting the answer in all 3 dimensions. I'm not really missing anything in here. But again, when I do deal with lookup, my approximate match, I have to be very careful with the invoice numbers. When I go for a VLOOKUP, I have a facility to do so that I can just say give the number only when it matches. If not, don't do that. In XLOOKUP, I really don't care about it. The system takes care of it automatically the moment I tell the system that I want the answer. Wherever the invoice number doesn't match, it's gonna throw an error message to me, like I get in an exact match in my vertical lookup, whether it is a single column dynamic VLOOKUP or whether it is a multiple column dynamic VLOOKUP. Again, I have to start the XLOOKUP a little later because I want to go for XLOOKUP a little deeper. So we need more time to do that. So when we come back on Monday or in my next video, you will get the XLOOKUPs data set. I would like to add the XLOOKUP little detailedly because I planned it to do it today, but again, I have literally around 20 plus scenarios here for you. So there are a few formulas which we already used. There are a few formulas which we have never learned. So probably wherever we haven't learned the formula, I will come back to the XLOOKUP back and forth here. Most of the formulas that we learned will be here. Again, there are a few formulas which I would like to teach you also here. Again, I touched the VLOOKUP, lookup and XLOOKUP a bit. So XLOOKUP, I will show you where I can replace a VLOOKUP with an XLOOKUP, because many people think that once the XLOOKUP comes into play, all these functions are going to disappear. Each and every function has its own point for us. We are still use them. And again, XLOOKUP came to us in 2019. Again, it's almost 5+ years now, and now XLOOKUP is most widely used. People started ignoring VLOOKUP and index and match because once the VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP came, lookup was sacked or maybe fired out of usage. The same way now people are slowly but steadily started using XLOOKUP frequently, and then VLOOKUP and HLOOKUPs are getting fired sooner or later. Again, there are a few scenarios we still use VLOOKUP. When we come back on XLOOKUP, I want to explain something here, so I need some good time, because when I explain the concept and then when I don't show you an example, that was not going to be good. So we are about to see around 25 plus or 27 formulas here. We're going to use wildcard. We're going to do a lot more these dimensions. So let me put one full video, because this is going to be the future of our learning. So I just gave you an introduction on XLOOKUP today. I'm going to make you learn, or I'm going to make you a mastery user of Excel sooner or later. This is Vinod signing out from our Excel Super User Program and Excel User Series 6.2 video number 14. Have a great day ahead. Keep updating. Happy learning.